Bang, Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and today we are talking about regrinds, specifically from BGM Knives. Now, I wanted to get this done because I got to send these back to Talica. I did sharpen them, and I just want to say that I'm going to link BGM Knives Instagram in the description. But if he sees this and he drops his email or however to contact him in the comments, I will pin it in the comments. Now, the regrinds. So before we get into the regrinds, I just want to say that I'm also going to talk about some knives that I think regrinds would do really good on. Knives that deserve regrinds. Now, also we're going to look at one of his custom fixed blades. So, first off, this is one of his flat grinds. Extremely, extremely well done. Let me move these out of the way for 1 second. Now, his regrinds are really, really good. And as far as I know, they're very affordable. They're really good pricing. You're going to have to talk to him about pricing for, because I'm sure there's lots of variables. But if you look at even this sharpening choil that he added, this is a great example of a well done sharpening choil. Now, if you look, you can see how thin it is looking at this portion. And the plunge grind starts where the black coating is. So basically right at my nail at that little line, and then it ends right there. Because that's what a choil is about. A choil isn't about just a notch. It's about the plunge grind from the thickest portion of the blade dropping down to the thinnest portion or to the cutting edge. So since you have from here all the way to the edge, that's all life you can sharpen away. Now, the only way that it would have benefited any more would be if it was just a little higher, like if it was a little deeper this way, like, just straight deeper, because then that would give you more to take off of this edge before it moves up this way. Because every time you sharpen it, it's going to keep moving up this way. But regardless, well done. Very well done. Very thin behind the edge. I forget what I measured it. I think it was like 10 thousandths behind the edge. Something like that, right around that area. Very, very slicey. Way slicier than it, ever could have been, without the regrind. Now, if you look at the grind, there are a couple spots in the flat grind that are just a little bit inconsistent, which you can expect from, a regrind. Now, the hollow grind I'm going to pull up here in a second is done even better, but you see it's a little thinner here than it is right here, but it's really not a big deal. I would absolutely pay for a regrind like this. This is extremely well done. Nice satin finish, and Talica uses his knives, so it's going to have scratch and love marks. Now let's look at the hollow grind, because I think this hollow grind is extremely well done. Very nice, or nice and thin behind the edge, and it has a nice taper up to a thicker tip so that the tip isn't dainty or it's not going to break on you. But if you look at the plunge grind, same thing. Very nice. Starts here, ends right there, so you have all of this life to sharpen away. And gets very, very thin. You can see how thin it is. Now, if we look at we can look at either one of these. I'm going to bring that back up here in 1 second. But look at this compared to my XM24, which is similar to what it used to be. I know the XM24, I think, is a little bit thicker. But you can see how much thinner that is. Now look at my 3-inch. And you can still see even thinner than the 3-inch. So very, very nice. And the hollow, in my opinion, is done slightly better than the flat grind. It's a little more consistent from one side to the other. And I put a polished edge on both of these. They took a really good edge. And now one benefit to having a regrind or a thinner edge is it's going to sharpen up faster and easier. It's going to be slicier because since it's thinner, it's going to allow you to remove steel faster. It's going to sharpen up way easier. It's just going to perform in every way better. And since these are already pretty thick, it's, you know, you're not making it to where it's too thin or anything. You're not making it to where it's going to, you know, it's going to bend or break like an Opinel or something. I mean, this is, it's got plenty of steel still to be very solid, very strong, and still capable of being a good hard use knife. Even with this one, I mean, I would say that this is still a fantastic hard use knife. And it's just extremely well done. And I love that he put this choil in there. Now let's take a look at another one before we get into some other stuff. So this is a PM2 he did. And if you look at one of my PM2s, you can see it's, you know, he removed quite a bit of steel to thin it out. And he put a little, or there's a clip point now, a lot thinner behind the edge. You can see my edge bevel compared, if it will focus. You see how big my edge bevel is? Now, basically the same angle, you can see how tiny this edge bevel is. So, it shows you how much thinner this is. Now, a PM2 is a great knife, in my opinion, for a regrind. And I say that because, yes, it's a very strong, durable, harder use platform. But the blade is, I'm not going to say weak, but okay, so the tip is nice and dainty. Normally, PM2s, when they break, they chip the tip. So the thinness behind the edge, it's about 20 thousandths behind the edge. So it's not thin behind the edge, but it does have a tall flat grind. Now, these things cut very well. I'm not saying they don't cut very well. But to increase the level of performance in cutting that you would get from this, thinning it out just a little bit more just increases the level of performance that you can get from a PM2 a lot. Because it's right there on that. You know, it's like if there's a line, it's right before the line. Like it's almost to that line. So doing a regrind just kicks it right over the line and makes it an ultimate slicer. You know, it just sits on the fence of not being a hard use knife and not being a great slicer. And you want it to make sense. Now, the build quality is really good. So it's a very, very tough knife. So in some ways, you make sense of it saying, well, it's, trying to be very strong, which I get, but it's not. Like, it's still not. It's not a hard use grind. It's not a hard use anything for the blade. It's only that solid or built really tough in the handle, which I respect a lot. But by thinning it out, you can really get that level of performance, which this knife is mostly designed for, which is cutting tasks. Not really designed for prying and stuff like that, or batoning, or you know what I mean. Like, this blade is just not designed for that, so it does benefit it massively with a regrind. Now let's look at one of his fixed blades really quick, or you know what, before we get into his fixed blade, a couple knives that I think would be great with a regrind, aside from the ones we've already looked at that do have regrinds. The Iron Pup, I think this is called. Yeah, the Iron Pup. Berg Blades Iron Pup. Great knife. Fantastic knife. Aside from the grind, this thing is ridiculously thick. So throwing a hollow grind on this, or a flat grind on this, or any type of regrind would make this a great user, a great knife. It is not the way it sits. It just does not cut good. It really doesn't. This thing cuts like crap, because it's set up for hard use, yet, even though it is a titanium frame lock and, a strong titanium frame lock, it's just not built like that to be this type of grind. This type of grind belongs on a XM24 or something. Now, another one, in my opinion, that I think is great for, say, a regrind or something like that, is another Hinder. The 3-inch, the XM18 3-inch. This is a perfect example of a knife that would be great with a regrind, because let's be real, even though it is a very tough knife, very solid, tough knife. You know, the geometry could be just a little bit better, which this is not a hard use knife, even though it is built very, very tough and solid. I mean, I don't doubt its strength, not one bit. I'm not saying it's not strong. I'm just saying it's not the right size for batoning, for prying. You know, you can get away with light duty prying with this, but putting a regrind on this would make this a nice little slicer, still capable of strong tasks and still being a very durable, strong knife. So I think the XM18 3-inch is a great example of a knife that would do very good with a regrind. Now I'm going to pull up a couple more, and these ones are like, they're not really, but they could be. Okay, so one, the Demco 8020. There is so much steel in this knife, it could totally handle losing some. Now, I will say, though, this knife, right as it sits, makes sense. The block is so strong, so durable, it can handle so much. But it only can handle that much because of the blade. The blade is thick, it is pry bar thick, it is very durable, it is a great example of a hard-use knife. Once you thin it out and do a regrind, you are taking away from that strength. I don't know a lot of people that need that level of strength in their folders, but I know we want it. So putting a hollow grind here, I think would increase the level of performance for cutting without sacrificing too much strength, because you would still have it, you know, thick as a brick everywhere else. So I think this is a good example of a knife that, by sacrificing a little bit of steel off that blade, it would cut a lot better, you know, but it would sacrifice a little bit of strength. Or something like the Microtech Socom Elite. Now, I don't know how he would do a Tonto or anything like that, but they do make drop point versions of this. And this is a hard use knife, which it does get very thin behind the edge, but it just does it so fast. And I've actually reviewed a hollow ground custom version of this knife, and you want to talk about awesome. Wow. It was super thin, very tall hollow grind. And I just want to say that would be a massive improvement to this. And I'm not saying you have to go as thin as the custom version did, but just putting a hollow here would increase the sharpening performance, the cutting performance, and the life of the knife through a lot of use. Now, it's also understandable if if you'd want to leave your Socom alone, because they are such tough, hard use knives. But it doesn't hurt to just thin it out right here and make it just that better of a cutter. And also it makes it, for every time you sharpen it, it doesn't get dramatically thicker, because even though I have sharpened this, but every time you sharpen it, it does get thicker on a knife like this. The Manix 2. This is a nice thin blade already. I think this could be okay, but in all reality, this thing slices very good. The lock is very strong, very durable. So I don't know if this would be a good one, but I would say, though, if it did have a regrind, boy, this is a great, it's just a solid, straight, tall, flat grind. These would cut so crazy good with a regrind. Now, something like this, the Wii Mise. Now, this is more of a harder use knife. It kind of reminds me of something like the 0562, the ZT 0562, the Hinder edition. So by putting a hollow here, I think it would just make it really sweet. Now, it already cuts very good, so it doesn't need it. I'm not saying it needs it. I'm just saying it would be badass to have. But it's a very strong knife, a very durable knife. It is built for harder use, and this is a great example of a hard use knife done well, in my opinion. Spyderco Shamans, they do really good with regrinds as well, because they do have enough steel to where you can remove it. And this is a hard use knife, but if you find yourself really loving this knife, and mostly what you do is cut with it, you're not really doing real hard use tasks. I think people misunderstand what real hard use is. You know, just cutting a lot isn't hard use. Hard use is torturing your knife, is smacking the spine of the blade and prying with it and just doing things that risk breaking your knife. But if you're just cutting with it and you really love the level of comfort you get from the handle and just wish it cut a little bit better, a regrind would work great on Shamans and lots of other knives. And there's a lot of knives that would do great with a regrind. Let's check out one of his fixed blades really quick. I'm going to do a review on this fixed blade, but I just want to kind of showcase it a little bit since we're talking about BGM knives. Very comfortable handle, very nice. This one is in crew wear, and let me just say this. I've already sharpened it. I'm going to put a polished edge on it before I send it back to Talica. But for my testing, I put about a 600 grit edge on it. And let me just say, the second it hit the stone, I could feel the quality of heat treat this thing has. I think you have to sharpen a lot to really understand what that feeling is, but I could feel how hard this steel is and how good it was. It really felt great on the stone. So that is something you're going to get from a custom knife maker that you won't get necessarily from production knives. The choil is done extremely well. Full flat grind. This thing, I haven't tested it yet, but so far, just from sharpening it, I can say from my tiny bit of experience, I think its heat treats are done very well. But we'll see in the testing. But there you guys go. I really just wanted to showcase some regrinds and talk about them and kind of lead you guys to a good place to get regrinds if you're in, if you're wanting to get one, because there are a lot of knives out there that would just benefit so much from a regrind. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.